Good evening, and welcome to Truth Report. I'm Alex Truth. Tonight, we are covering a war that is being waged without the consent of the American people, without the authorization of Congress, and, according to a growing number of constitutional scholars, without any legal foundation whatsoever. Schools near Tehran hit by missiles. Drone strikes hitting Azerbaijan. And the entire rules-based international order crumbling under the weight of impunity.
I'm Maya Clarity. And Alex, what we're seeing unfold across the Middle East right now isn't just a series of isolated military actions. It is a pattern, a deliberate, systematic escalation that bypasses every democratic safeguard the founders of this republic put in place. Tonight, we're going to connect these dots, because no one else in the mainstream press seems willing to do it.
We have 5 major stories to break down tonight, and every single one of them points to the same conclusion: the machinery of war is operating on autopilot, and the people who are supposed to be in the cockpit, our elected representatives, have abandoned the controls entirely. So buckle in. This is going to be a long one.
Let's start with the constitutional crisis at the heart of all of this. Because if we don't understand the legal framework, or rather, the complete absence of a legal framework, everything else we discuss tonight is just noise. The law matters. The Constitution matters. And right now, both are being shredded.
That's right. And we begin with a powerful piece from Consortium News by Andrew P. Napolitano, a former judge, a constitutional scholar, and someone who has been sounding the alarm on executive overreach for decades. His article, published today, pulls no punches. The headline says it all: Trump's unjust and unconstitutional war.
Judge Napolitano's argument is rooted in the text of the Constitution itself, Alex. Article 1, Section 8 is unambiguous. The power to declare war belongs to Congress. Not to the President. Not to the Pentagon. Not to the National Security Council. To Congress. The founders were explicit about this because they had lived under a king who could send their sons to die on a whim, and they wanted to make sure that never happened in this new republic.
And Napolitano's central argument, as reported by Consortium News, is devastating in its clarity. If the United States gets into the business of Congress merely ratifying wars that presidents have already initiated on their own authority, then we are not preserving the constitutional order. We are destroying it. We are normalizing presidential force. We are turning the most consequential decision a nation can make, whether to send its people to kill and die, into an executive prerogative.
And here's what makes this so dangerous, Alex. It's not just about this president or this war. It's about precedent. Every time a president launches military action without a declaration of war from Congress, and Congress does nothing, or worse, retroactively rubber stamps it, the bar gets lower. The next president has an easier path. The one after that, even easier. We are on a slow, inexorable slide toward unchecked executive war power, which is precisely what Napolitano warns about.
Let's be clear about the historical context here. The last time Congress formally declared war was 1942. Since then, we've had Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and now Iran, all conducted under various legal fictions. Authorizations for the use of military force. UN resolutions. NATO obligations. Executive findings. The creativity of lawyers in the service of war knows no bounds.
And the War Powers Resolution of 1973, which was supposed to be the check on this. The law that says a president must notify Congress within 48 hours and cannot sustain military operations beyond 60 days without congressional authorization, has been treated as a suggestion, not a law. Presidents of both parties have either ignored it, reinterpreted it, or used creative legal arguments to claim it doesn't apply to whatever military adventure they're currently pursuing.
Napolitano, according to his piece in Consortium News, is making a fundamentally conservative argument in the truest sense of the word. He is arguing for the conservation of the constitutional order. He is saying that the document means what it says, and what it says is that one person, no matter how powerful, no matter how popular, no matter how convinced they are of their own righteousness, does not get to take this nation to war alone.
And that brings us to what this war actually looks like on the ground, Alex. Because while constitutional scholars debate the legal niceties in Washington, real people are dying in real places. Let's turn to our second story tonight, and it's one that should make every person watching this broadcast deeply uncomfortable.
Al Jazeera is reporting that missiles fired by the United States and Israel have struck 2 schools near Tehran, in the city of Paran. 2 schools. Let that sink in. And this comes just 6 days after what Al Jazeera describes as the deadliest single attack during the war on Iran, which killed 165 people.
165 people, Alex. In a single attack. And now schools are being hit. Iranian media is reporting this, Al Jazeera is confirming it, and the question that every American needs to be asking right now is, who authorized this? Under what legal authority are American missiles striking schools in a country we have not declared war against? Where is the congressional debate? Where is the vote?
And this is where Napolitano's constitutional argument stops being abstract and becomes viscerally, horrifyingly real. When you remove the democratic check on war-making, when one person or a small group of advisors can order strikes at will, this is what you get. Missiles hitting schools. Because there is no deliberation. There is no debate. There is no one standing up in the well of the Senate and saying, wait. Are we sure about this target? Are we sure there aren't children inside?
The city of Paran is a suburb of Tehran. It's a residential area. It has schools because people live there, families, children, teachers. And the pattern of strikes hitting civilian infrastructure is not an aberration, it's becoming a feature of this campaign. When you wage war without democratic oversight, without transparency, without accountability, civilian casualties don't get the scrutiny they deserve. They become statistics, filed away in classified after-action reports that the public never sees.
And let's talk about the scale of what's happening here. An attack 6 days ago that killed 165 people. That would be front-page news for weeks in any other context. That's more than the Oklahoma City bombing. That's more than most terrorist attacks in modern history. And yet, because it's happening in Iran, because it's being done by American and Israeli forces, the coverage is muted. The outrage is selective.
Al Jazeera's reporting makes clear that this is an escalating campaign. The frequency of strikes is increasing. The targets are expanding. And the death toll is climbing. This is what an undeclared, unconstitutional war looks like in practice, not a single dramatic moment, but a grinding, daily accumulation of destruction that most Americans are barely aware of.
Now let's widen the lens, because this war is not confined to Iran. Our third and fourth stories tonight come from Middle East Eye, and they reveal a dangerous new front opening up. Drone attacks have struck Azerbaijan, a sovereign nation that is not a party to the conflict with Iran, and the response has been swift and furious.
According to Middle East Eye, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has called the drone strikes an act of terror. 4 people have been injured in what Azerbaijan describes as an alleged Iranian drone attack. Now, we need to be precise here, the word alleged is doing important work in that sentence. Attribution of drone strikes is complicated, and we should be careful about jumping to conclusions. But Azerbaijan is clearly pointing the finger at Iran.
And here's where it gets really dangerous, Maya. Turkey's foreign ministry has come out and, according to Middle East Eye, strongly condemned the drone attacks on Azerbaijan. Turkey, a NATO member, with one of the largest militaries in the alliance, is now publicly aligning itself against what it characterizes as Iranian aggression against its close ally Azerbaijan.
The Turkey-Azerbaijan relationship is one of the most significant in the region. Turkey was Azerbaijan's primary backer during the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War. The two countries share deep ethnic, linguistic, and cultural ties. And Turkey has been expanding its military footprint across the region for years, in Syria, in Libya, in the eastern Mediterranean. So when Turkey strongly condemns an attack on Azerbaijan, that is not just diplomatic language. That is a signal.
Let's think about what this means for the broader conflict. If Iran is indeed behind drone strikes on Azerbaijan, and again, this is alleged at this point, then the war is spilling across borders in exactly the way that critics warned it would. Iran, under sustained military assault from the United States and Israel, may be lashing out at regional adversaries. And that kind of escalation has a logic of its own that is very, very hard to control.
And this is precisely why the founders gave Congress the power to declare war, Alex. Because war is not a surgical, contained operation. It is chaos. It spreads. It draws in neighbors and allies and adversaries in ways that no one can predict. The idea that a president can unilaterally initiate military action against a major regional power like Iran and somehow keep it neat and contained, that is a fantasy. Azerbaijan is learning that right now.
The 4 people injured in Azerbaijan may seem like a small number compared to the 165 killed in Iran 6 days ago. But the political implications are enormous. Every regional power is now calculating its response. Every alliance is being tested. Every diplomatic relationship is under strain. This is what escalation looks like, not a single dramatic moment, but a web of actions and reactions that grows more complex and more dangerous by the day.
And Turkey's condemnation adds another layer. Because if Turkey decides that its security interests require a more active response, if it moves forces, if it provides more direct military support to Azerbaijan, if it invokes its obligations under various bilateral agreements, then you have a NATO member potentially being drawn into a conflict with Iran. And that has implications for every other NATO member, including the United States.
Which brings us to a deeply troubling question that no one in Washington seems willing to ask: did anyone game this out? Did anyone in the administration sit down and think through the second, third, and fourth-order consequences of launching a military campaign against Iran? Or did they assume, as war planners always assume, that it would be quick, it would be clean, and the enemy would simply absorb the blows without responding?
Now let's turn to our fifth story tonight, Alex, because it ties everything together. Al Jazeera has published an opinion piece with a headline that should send chills down the spine of anyone who believes in international law. Israel puts a target on the back of the rules-based order. And the specific claim in this piece is stunning. Israel is suggesting that those who seek to enforce international law regarding Gaza will meet the fate of a destroyed Iranian warship.
Let me make sure our viewers understand the gravity of that. According to Al Jazeera's analysis, Israel is essentially threatening international institutions and actors who attempt to hold it accountable for its actions in Gaza. The destruction of an Iranian warship is being held up not just as a military achievement, but as a warning, a message to the International Criminal Court, to the United Nations, to any nation or organization that might try to enforce the rules that the international community agreed upon after the horrors of World War II.
This is the rules-based international order being dismantled in real time, Alex. And it's not being dismantled by some rogue state on the margins of the global system. It's being dismantled by a close ally of the United States, with American weapons, under American diplomatic cover. The Geneva Conventions, the UN Charter, the Rome Statute, these aren't just pieces of paper. They are the accumulated wisdom of a world that looked at the carnage of the 20th century and said, never again.
And here's what makes this moment so historically significant. The rules-based order has always been imperfect. It has always been selectively enforced. The powerful have always been able to bend the rules in ways that the weak cannot. That's a legitimate criticism. But there is a profound difference between a system that is imperfectly enforced and a system that is openly repudiated. What we are witnessing now is the latter.
When a state openly threatens those who would enforce international law, when the message is not "we disagree with this particular ruling but attempt to hold us accountable and we will destroy you," that is not a critique of the system. That is the end of the system. Because international law only works if there is a shared understanding that it applies to everyone, including the powerful. Remove that understanding, and you don't have law anymore. You have the law of the jungle.
And this connects directly back to the constitutional crisis we opened with. Because the domestic rule of law and the international rule of law are not separate things. They are the same principle applied at different scales. If a president can wage war without congressional authorization, then domestic law doesn't constrain the use of force. If a state can threaten international institutions with destruction, then international law doesn't constrain the use of force. In both cases, the message is the same: power is its own justification.
And who benefits from this, Alex? Who benefits when the rules don't apply? It's not ordinary people. Ordinary people benefit from rules. Rules protect the weak from the strong. Rules give the powerless a voice. Rules create predictability and stability. When the rules disappear, it's the powerful who benefit, the states with the biggest militaries, the leaders with the most unchecked authority, the corporations that profit from conflict.
Let's connect all 5 of these stories now, because the pattern is unmistakable. Story 1, a constitutional scholar warns that presidential war power is being normalized without congressional checks. Story 2, missiles from the US and Israel hit schools near Tehran, killing civilians in an escalating campaign. Stories 3 and 4, the war spills across borders into Azerbaijan, drawing in Turkey, a NATO member. Story 5, Israel openly threatens those who would enforce international law.
The thread that connects all of these is impunity, Alex. Impunity at every level. A president who wages war without legal authority and faces no consequences. A military campaign that kills civilians, including in schools, with no accountability. A conflict that destabilizes an entire region with no one hitting the brakes. And an open threat against the very institutions designed to prevent exactly this kind of unchecked aggression.
And impunity is not a stable state. It is an accelerant. Every act of impunity makes the next one easier. Every time a red line is crossed without consequence, the next red line matters less. We saw this in the lead-up to World War I. We saw it in the 1930s. We are seeing it now. The question is whether anyone, in Congress, in international institutions, in civil society, is going to stand up and say, enough.
Because here's what's at stake. It's not just Iran. It's not just Azerbaijan. It's not just Gaza. It's the entire framework of laws and norms that has, however imperfectly, prevented great power conflict for 80 years. That framework is under assault from multiple directions simultaneously. And if it collapses, there is nothing to replace it except raw power. And in a world of raw power, the only thing that matters is how many missiles you have.
Judge Napolitano wrote in Consortium News that this is not what the Constitution requires. He's right. It's not. But the Constitution is just words on parchment if no one enforces it. The international laws governing armed conflict are just words in treaties if no one enforces them. The protection of civilians, the prohibition on targeting schools and hospitals, the requirement for proportionality, these are all just words if no one enforces them.
And that enforcement starts with information. It starts with people knowing what is being done in their name. It starts with reporting like what we do here on Truth Report, and what journalists at Consortium News, Al Jazeera, and Middle East Eye are doing every single day, often at great personal risk. Because the first casualty of unchecked power is always the truth. If you can wage war in the dark, you can wage war without limits.
So what can you, our viewers, actually do? First, call your representatives. Ask them directly, have you voted to authorize military action against Iran? If not, why not? And if not, why are American missiles hitting schools near Tehran? Demand that they exercise their constitutional duty. They took an oath to the Constitution, not to any president.
Second, support independent journalism. The stories we covered tonight came from Consortium News, Middle East Eye, and Al Jazeera, outlets that are doing the work that much of the mainstream American press has abdicated. These outlets are reporting the facts that you need to make informed decisions as citizens of a democracy. And a democracy cannot function without informed citizens.
Third, remember that the rules-based order is not someone else's problem. It is the thin line between civilization and barbarism. Every time a school is bombed and no one is held accountable, that line gets thinner. Every time international law is openly mocked and threatened, that line gets thinner. Defending the rule of law is not idealism, it is the most hard-headed, practical thing any of us can do.
The founders of this republic understood something fundamental, that concentrated, unchecked power is the greatest threat to human freedom. That's why they divided power. That's why they gave the war power to Congress. That's why they created a system of checks and balances. Not because they were naive, but because they had seen what happens when one person can decide, on their own, to send a nation to war.
Tonight, we've shown you how that system is failing. We've shown you the constitutional crisis, the civilian casualties, the regional destabilization, and the assault on international law. These are not separate stories. They are one story, the story of what happens when power operates without constraint.
And that story is still being written. The ending is not determined. But it will be determined by what we, all of us, do next. Whether we accept impunity as the new normal, or whether we demand the accountability that the law requires and that human decency demands.
That's all for tonight's Truth Report. I'm Alex Truth.
And I'm Maya Clarity. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. And never stop asking the questions that power doesn't want answered. Good night.